Hi, Mary Linda. Today we're going to talk to you about the impact of the coronavirus on local companies.
This case study examines how the coronavirus pandemic affected Quebec's economy with a particular focus on its impact on local companies. The topic was chosen because the group personally experienced significant change as consumers during the pandemic, especially in the way we purchased goods and services. These shifts in buying habits raise questions about how local businesses adapt to new circumstances, promoting a deeper investigation. The study aims to determine whether these companies managed to thrive and struggle during the crisis, and also analyze how their profits were influenced by the change in consumer behavior. 2019, where the first cases of new and highly contagious virus were detected. It spread rapidly from person to person, and within weeks, infection began appearing in countries around the world. By early 2020, the World Health Organization declared of a global pandemic as the situation escalated. The consequences were immediate and severe. A large number of people became seriously ill and many died. Hospitals were quickly overwhelmed, with emergency rooms and intensive care units filled to capacity. In some places, healthcare workers had no choice but to refuse non-urgent care and their direct patients because there simply were not enough beds, staff, or equipment. To slow the spread, government enforced strict public health measures. Lockdowns were introduced, forcing people to stay home and leading to the closure of schools, workplaces, restaurants, and most public spaces. Daily routine changed dramatically as people adapt to remote work, online learning, and limited social contact. The pandemic created both social and economic challenges, leaving lasting effect on community around the world. In this presentation, we're going to talk about the economic impacts that the coronavirus had on GDP growth and on unemployment.
The first aspect that impacted our economy is the unemployment. During COVID, the government had to shut down multiple services to prevent the virus from spreading. The virus impacted a lot of the economy of Quebec because everything was closed and nothing was stimulating our economy anymore. It had a massive impact on the unemployment rate for two major reasons. First, the businesses struggled trying to survive the pandemic, so they did not have enough money to pay all of the employees. And second, the physical stores were closed. Multiple commerce had to cut down jobs due to not having enough money to survive the pandemic and had to hire people for their online stores instead of their physical ones. In fact, the unemployment jumped to 70% in April after the public space, the schools and daycare, the custom and all the services except vital services closed. In March, it already increases from 4.5% to 8.1%. Also, about 60% of Quebec businesses reported losing at least 30% of their revenue compared to the year before, and nearly a third had to lay off workers. Finally, telework has increased since the beginning of the pandemic and continues to grow.
The second aspect we will talk about is GDP growth and how it slowed during coronavirus. So GDP is basically the measure of the total value of everything a province produces. So when it drops, it means the whole economy is producing less. At the beginning of the pandemic, in March and April 2020, Quebec went into strict lockdown. Many sectors had to close almost overnight. Restaurants, hotels, gyms, arts and entertainment venues, construction sites, and a large part of retailers were forced to shut down. Because of so many of Quebec's local businesses depend on in-person activity, these closures immediately reduced production and sales. As a result, from February to April 2020, real GDP in Quebec fell by almost 23%, specifically 22.9%, which is extremely a steep decline. Local companies were hit especially hard. As we mentioned in the previous slide, companies had to lay off many workers. When businesses make less money and employ fewer people, they also produce less, which directly pulls GDP down. Small and medium-sized businesses like restaurants, shops, small manufacturers, and service companies were the most affected, and these businesses make up a large portion of Quebec's economy. Another reason GDP fell is that some industries almost completely stopped functioning. For example, accommodations and food services dropped more than 60%. Arts and entertainment lost almost half of their usual activity, and transportation also fell. Since these factors normally contribute billions of dollars to Quebec's economy, the sudden stop of those sectors had a major impact on the province's total production. This chart demonstrates the trends in gross domestic product per capita and its components from 1981 to 2020. We can see that between 2019 and 2021 is where COVID hit its peak, which is where the black arrow is pointing to. Since 2020, when COVID started, there has been a steady decline in our GDP of 1.3% every year. This is a significant annual decrease, and it stems from the economic impacts that the coronavirus had on us and that it still has now. The second chart is the real GDP by industry in Quebec, April and December 2020 levels compared to February 2020. We can see that from December to April, there has been a drop in every single sector in real GDP by industries in Quebec, which is the local industries that we've been talking about. There was not one sector that was exempt from these drops. As we can see, all the industries were affected.
Okay, so we had a conversation with the owner, David Côté-Hamel, of the company Mébobette. He explained to us that the impact of the COVID on his company. So during our interview with the owner, he explained that the transition to operating online during the pandemic was surprisingly easy for them. The business was already well established and had a strong online presence before the crisis began, which made the shift much smoother compared to other local companies. Because of this advantage, the company not only stayed stable but actually made a significant amount of money during the pandemic. He also mentioned that they already had an efficient shipping team in place, which allowed them to handle the sudden increase in online orders without major delays. However, the unexpected growth brought new challenges. With demand rising quickly, the company needed to hire more employees to keep up. The owner admitted that this period required a lot of hard work, long hours, and constant adaptation, but in the end, it helped the company expand even further. The interview shows that not all companies suffered during the pandemic. While many businesses struggled, this company was able to thrive because it was already well prepared for online operations. Its strong digital presence and effective shipping system allowed it to handle the increase in demand, leading to significant financial success. Although the rapid growth required hiring more employees and working long hours, these challenges ultimately supported the company expansion. Overall, the discussion highlights that adaptability and preparation can allow some businesses to grow even in times of crisis.
In conclusion, the coronavirus pandemic had a major impact on local companies and on the economy as a whole. The unemployment rate increased sharply as many businesses were forced to fire employees or temporarily closed. At the same time, Quebec's GDP went down, reflecting the overall slowdown in economy activity. To survive, companies had to change their usual habits and quickly adapt to new ways of operating. Many shifted online, developing virtual services or improving their website, while others had to reorganize their staff, either reducing their workforce or hiring new employees to meet changing demands. Overall, the pandemic showed that flexibility and the ability to adapt were essential for local companies, as not all businesses suffered in the same way. Some struggled greatly while others managed to adjust and continue operating in a rapidly changing environment.